Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to cilinixfxcapital. Hope you're all doing great. And welcome to this middle of the day market update. This beautiful Saturday. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Hope you're all having a great day. We'll talk about the markets today. The volume has been quite low, but we have seen some activity, as most of you know. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum, which at this point of time are the most interesting coins, I would say. We'll do a quick cover of XRP as well. We'll talk about some altcoins, but I wanted to start off. We'll talk about some altcoins that I personally like and where I think that there's some opportunities. So that's a little later. But I wanted to start off with a bit of a preparation for next week. I'm not certain if I'll be able to make a video tomorrow afternoon, unfortunately. So I wanted to speak on next week a little bit already, because we do have some major news, all right, with inflation rate data and CPI data coming out Tuesday. So be aware of that. There's also potential peace talks going on between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by the United States. So we'll see what comes from that. I mean, obviously, I don't have any information on that you do not have. So it's going to be key to look at some fundamental factors, right? So how does the S&P 500 behave? How's the volatility index, the VIX developing? Things like that will matter. But news that we do expect and that we do know that's coming is the CPI data and inflation rate on Tuesday. We'd love to see lower than expected data there. That would be great. That would greatly increase our chances at more rate cuts sooner, which is bullish for the markets. So keep your eyes on that. We have some Federal Reserve speeches throughout the week, but that rarely matters unless they say something that's very out of line of what has been said before. But like I said, I mean, that's a possibility, but would I really watch these? No, they're minor speeches. We have PPI data and initial jobless claims on Thursday. Could matter depending on the depending on the actual result. And then on Friday we have retail sales, and that's it. So very much Tuesday is a is a major day. Realize that, be prepared for that, but outside of that, it's a relatively quiet week. In terms of economic data, at least. Now, getting to the markets. So Bitcoin today has been low volume, right? So it's a typical weekend day. We had a bit of a move up right here into the point of control here at 118,000, or at least that area. From there, we rejected with, well, high volume, I would not call it, but a little bit higher volume than normal. And we're now just simply moving in this tight range right here between 117.4 and 116,000. I assume that we will stay in that range, but from that range, which I also said this morning, I expect a move up higher, all right, in this balance, which we formed earlier, where the, so the main balance right there is basically around 118,000, right? That's what I expect for next week. It does depend on the fundamentals, like the inflation rate, etc., etc. But I do think it's most likely, assuming that the inflation rate is just going to be as expected, that we're going to see that move up there for Bitcoin. And when we're talking about Ethereum, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because at this point of time, what we have, at least for altcoins, right? Because if you take a look at Ethereum, and we'll take a look at the 12-hour chart, if you take a look at Ethereum, if you take a look at others, they're basically in the same predicament, all right? I think it's fair to say that they're bullish, right? So Ethereum right now and most altcoins are bullish. But the thing is, and this is something I've spoken about this morning, and this is also something you should really think about yourself. The major question is all right, well, after all of this bullish momentum that we've seen in the last couple of days, are we just going to push through, right? So are we just going to get a continuation up here higher, which is a possibility. Like, I would completely understand if you think that's most likely given these fundamentals and given the price action that we've seen. Or are we going to get a pullback? And this is, like I said, I mean, we're looking at the others chart right here. So we're taking a look at altcoins. But you can say exactly the same for Ethereum, right? The charts look fairly similar. We've had an aggressive bullish move up. Now we have all the imbalances to the downside. Are we going to fill those or not? And I think it's most likely, given the circumstances and given the move and given the timing in the markets right now, that when we're talking about Ethereum, I think it's most likely we are going to fill some of those imbalances. And then after that, get continuation up higher. Because do I expect continuation up higher? Yes. Do I think we're bullish? Yes. But I think a pullback is more likely than direct continuation. Although I try to be honest in these videos. And honesty is telling you that both of them are possible. with these fundamentals, right? So with altcoins in general, I also do expect something like this. And honestly, I mean, XRP has been underperforming the markets a little bit after outperforming it last week. This is what I said this morning on XRP. I still do expect that, right? So for XRP, I also expect a pullback into this level right here at 3.15 and 3.1 first, before support, stability, and continuation. Now, when we're talking about some altcoins, look, Ethereum beta is still incredibly strong. So if you take a look at Uniswap, if you take a look at Pendle is incredibly strong, by the way. But also something like ENS, which we've actually entered in the Signal group. All of them are very strong. I think you should keep an eye on all of them. ETC, so Ethereum Classic, is actually quite strong as well. Compound, also quite strong. There's a lot of them. Ethereum Beta is still one of the main categories I think you should watch. And that's something I've told you last week as well. So hopefully some of you were actually able to profit off of that. Lido DAO, same thing. And there's a couple more interesting opportunities, I think. I personally like Aptos a lot. So that's the ticker of Aptos is APT. I think that's very interesting, although it has a little bit less momentum than the other coins. And what more do we have? Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it for now. Maybe I'll leave it at that. I mean, some of the majors that I would buy during a pullback would also be something like Chainlink. Chainlink has been incredibly strong. But that's I'll keep the short tight and concise. And then tomorrow I'll try to be back with a middle of the day market update or an altcoin video talking about some more altcoin opportunities. But as you might have realized during this video, I'm waiting for a pullback before I get more positioning. I opened some major positions last week. That was a great timing. But for now, I'm remaining patient. So those are my thoughts. That's what I think you need to know. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow, and take care.